directly to this platform, and then we're going to start, okay? Give me a little second. Okay, great, we are live. Awesome. So, as I told you, here we are. And let us start, okay? Well, let me just enter this. Okay. Awesome. Well, let's go. So as I tell you, the writing section is going to be our topic tonight. And well, I'm going to be discussing with you and teaching you how to perform on this part of the exam, okay? Well, here you are. So as you can see, the writing section, well, it's a very interesting part of the exam. It's actually the last part of the exam you'll have to care about because, as I say, remember that the exam has a very stable order. When you start and perform the exam, the first section you have to confront is the reading section, right? Then comes the listening section. Afterwards, you have your 10 minutes break. And when you come back, you have the speaking section, which of course we have finalized yesterday. And then you come to the writing section as the last part of the exam. And once you finalize this, that's it. You have performed very successfully in the TOEFL exam. And the only thing you have to do is to check out your grades or your scores for the reading and for the listening section. Now remember, when you finalize the exam, there are 2 scores out of the 4 you get, right? Because all the sections are qualified. There are 2 scores that you're able to see or to check out immediately. And those scores are the reading section and the listening section. The computer, immediately after you finalize the writing section, tells you how much you got in the reading and the listening section. But if you want to know your overall score, how much you got in the writing and the speaking section too, you have to wait approximately 1 week so that ETS has enough time to send all these recordings and transcripts to the professionals they have hired for that purpose. And as I say, in a matter of 1 week or 1 week and a half, you're going to receive your final score, including them, the writing section and the speaking section, okay? Well, anyways, that's just a general matter of the exam. Here you are then with the general aspects of the writing section. Let us discuss this together. So as you can see, the writing section is designed to measure your ability to write in English in an academic setting. That's very important, okay? And you're expected to be able to present your ideas in a clear, well-organized manner. Now, remember that in the speaking section, we had 4 different questions to respond. That is to say, we had 4 different tasks. Now the scenario has changed and we don't have the same thing anymore. But as you can see here, in the writing section, we have 2 different tasks. The first one is called integrated task, which, as you can see, lasts for approximately 20 minutes, okay? And in this one, well, you'll have to read a short passage and listen to a short lecture, and then write an essay in response to what you read and listened to. And then you'll have the independent writing task, which lasts for approximately 30 minutes. And you'll have to write in that question an essay based on personal experience or opinion in response to a writing topic. So notice how there are 2 different essays you have to write for this section. Now you were wondering that how many essays, how many papers do I have to write for the TOEFL exam? 2. That's the response. You have to write 2 essays because you're going to have to respond 2 questions. And for each of those questions, you have to come up with an essay as a response to the question, okay? So notice, it's very simple to understand. 2 questions, and for each of those questions, you have to write a different essay. And that essay is going to constitute your response, and that's going to be your performance in this part of the exam, okay? Well, so this is very important. If you're taking the IBT version and the home IBT version, remember that both of these sections, both of these modalities imply you to have the necessity to write down your essays using a computer and basically performing the entire exam using a computer. You'll type your responses on a keyboard, right? For obvious reasons, given that if you're using a computer, Doesn't matter if you're going to a test center to take the exam, they are going to provide you with a keyboard. Okay, it's very normal an external keyboard because when you go to test centers, they do not normally have laptops, but they have desktop computers. Okay, so if you plan to take the IBT version, very likely you're going to receive an external keyboard and you're going to write on your essay using that keyboard. Now, if you're taking the home IBT version, you are the one who decides whether to use a laptop or a desktop computer. If you just have a laptop, for example, that you take with you to the university, or you also have a desktop computer, you have the opportunity to choose in that scenario which one would you like to use. Of course, if both of them meet the requirements that ETS is constantly renewing for the home IBT version. You have to check that out, as I told you, in ETS official website. They have all the information. And as I always tell you, it's very difficult to tell you what type of software or camera or microphone you have to present on that day because they constantly change it. You have to check it out, okay? And everything you can find it in ETS official website. But remember, the first date of our classes, I sent the official website to the WhatsApp group. So if you want to go there, just scroll down until you find that in the WhatsApp group, okay? Anyways, so here the thing I want to make sure you understand is that using a keyboard is going to become a very essential skill you have to perfect for this part of the exam. Unless, of course, you're planning to take the PBT version, right? The one that is paper-based test. If that's the case, of course, you're not going to write your essays with a keyboard. Instead, you're going to write on your essays using your own hands, right? Pencil and eraser, and writing your essay thus. Nonetheless, I guess none of you is going to take it. Well, at least I believe so, because it's not very common and in a very few quantity of countries that modality is still available. Nonetheless, if you're planning to take it, well, of course, you're just going to have to write it with your own hands, okay? But for the rest of you, this is going to be a real concern, okay? And the first thing I want you to know is that if you're going to take the exam using a computer for any of these modalities that requires you to have one, you need to practice, okay, with me tomorrow and by yourself using an American keyboard configuration. That's very important. What do I mean by American keyboard configuration? Let me show you my computer. So you know that depending on the country you're living in, computers are differently organized in configurations, right, and settings. And something very interesting is that, you know, when you go to your settings in your computer, and you write, for example, in this case, right, keyboard, or well, in this case, it would be teclado, right, in Spanish. So look at this. When you go to your configurations, you're going to find this. There's going to be an option that is called keyboard or teclado in Spanish. And when you get there, you're going to find out that your keyboard can be in one of two different positions. It can be settled in English or in Spanish normally, right? So what you have to do in order to practice this very successfully, dear students, is to change it to English, okay, to an American English configuration, US English, all right? Most likely your keyboards are going to be established in Spanish, Mexican Spanish, or Latin American Spanish. So change it, okay? Why do I tell you this? Because when you go to your test center, okay, if you're planning to go to one of them, they are going to offer you a keyboard that is configured with that particular setting. They are going to be configured in English configuration. And as you know, and as I told you, keyboards configured in this particular setting and modality are different to the Spanish ones because the letters and symbols are located into different positions, all right? So let me tell you what happened to me the first time I took the exam. I didn't know this, okay? Nobody told me this. Probably I didn't read it, okay? Because certainly ETS tells you about this, but I was not careful enough to read the entire information they provided me with. But the idea is that when I arrived to the test center and I started the writing section, I noticed that the letters and the symbols, for example, making an apostrophe or semicolon or colon, were not in the position that I had practiced them. And that was very, very much troublesome for obvious reasons. I didn't know how to make an apostrophe. I didn't know how to make a semicolon. I didn't know how to make a colon. I didn't know how to write on parentheses. It was a chaos, basically. But I very rapidly found out it was because the keyboard was in a different configuration. So I had to ask staff members from ETS to help me out. They very kindly did it. Well, very likely. But of course, that basically costed me a lot of time that I could have used for writing my essay instead of asking for help, right? So you're going to find this. And if you're planning to take the home IBT version, the exact same thing. They are going to make sure your keyboard is configured in American English configuration, okay? So whether you are planning to take the home IBT version or the IBT version, configure your keyboard and practice with an American version. If you don't know how to make parentheses, commas, apostrophes, colons, semicolons, etc., practice that with your American keyboard, okay? Just look, search, make your research on the internet on how to type these symbols in this configuration. And trust me, it's going to be a very simple adaptation. With a matter of days, you're going to be used to it, and it's not going to be difficult to use it, okay? Because normally it's, I would say, in an 80% the same, but there are some very important differences, considerable ones. So you really need to have the chance to look at it by yourself, okay? Great, so that's the first thing I wanted to say, very important, okay? Awesome. So is there any question with regard to the general aspects of the writing section? Something that I could clarify? Your students, tell me please. Is there any question? Daniela, Lucia, Flavia, Jasmine, Maya, Karen, Lenny. Any question? No? No questions?
No, teacher.
Okay. Thank you very much, Karen. Well, so if there are no questions, let us get into our a special topic of tonight's class. As I told you, we have two different tasks, but we're going to concentrate right now into this one, okay? That is the integrated essay, okay? So this is the first task of the writing section, all right? This is the first essay you have to write. And let us start with this one. We're going to discuss this one tonight. We're going to get into all the details and whereabouts you have to know about this essay. And then we're going to practice tomorrow, okay? So let us discuss it. As I told you, in this case, this essay is called integrated essay. And I know that for all of you, this is a very similar word, or in this case, very, very familiar one, because we've been listening this word in our previous classes, integrated, right? And I think you're very right to make your presuppositions here. In this first task, you have 3 minutes to read a passage, okay? And maybe you are starting to get the idea here. And if you have already comprehended this and gotten the feeling that this task in the writing section is very identical to the fourth task of the writing section, you're right. Because as you can see, this task pertains to the same kind of question as the second, third, and fourth question in the speaking section, right? Integrated question. So what you have to do when performing in this essay, before you actually write your essay, you have to receive two materials from ETS. First of all, a reading passage and then a listening passage. That's what I like about the TOEFL exam. I have said this several times, that it's very repetitive. And I love that because if they're not changing things very constantly, it's very easy to get adapted, right? Trust me, because I've been taking other examinations lately. I just shared it because I'm very happy about it. I recently took the Duolingo exam, the Duolingo test. And trust me, the Duolingo exam, most people say it's very easy, but it's not actually. I would say it's even more complex than the TOEFL exam in a manner. Of course, maybe the content is less demanding and challenging, but what really annoyed me, at least initially in the Duolingo exam, is how constantly they change things. That is to say, when you start, for example, in the listening part of the Duolingo exam, nothing there is going to be similar to the reading part or to the writing part or to the speaking part. So everything is different. And when that's the case, you notice, right? It's difficult to get adapted to everything. But in the TOEFL exam, the beauty is that everything is similar. So the only thing that changes is what you do. But the concepts there are basically identical to the entire exam. And that's an advantage, definitely, trust me, okay? So the idea here, dear students, is Notice that you're going to have to receive two materials from ETS. First of all, a reading passage, then a listening one. And you have to read the passage. Okay, as you can see, you have 3 minutes for reading the passage because in this case, it's going to be larger than before. Remember that until this point, you've been having reading passages of maybe 100 words, 150 words. And now those passages are going to be longer, okay? And then you're going to listen to a lecture. And maybe you're wondering, what are going to be the topics of such materials? And the response is very simple: academic topics, all right? Scholar topics. For example, the reading passage may be about, let's say, Darwin's evolutionary theory. I always use this example as my paradigm. But let's say your reading passage is about Darwin's evolutionary theory. So if you read that passage, that as I say is going to be longer this time, 3 minutes, you're going to have to read it for the very simple reason that it's going to contain more words. So when you finalize reading the passage, you have to listen to a lecture, as you did in the fourth task of the speaking section, that is going to discuss the exact same topic, Darwin's evolutionary theory. Now, there is a little variation there. I'm going to explain it later. But notice that the concept is exactly the same. Reading a passage, listening to a lecture, and maybe you're wondering, what am I going to do with that? Well, you're going to prepare an essay. Guess what? Summarizing both materials, summarizing the reading passage and summarizing the listening passage, just as you did in the speaking section. And that's what I tell you. The TOEFL exam is very repetitive, and that's very good. That's very advantageous for you. Very easy to comprehend. Well, and notice here, I have a picture of a journalist once again. It's a different picture at least, but it's the same journalist, okay? And I want that, I did that on purpose because I want you to understand, dear students. In this case, as I tell you, the only thing you have to do with these passages after you read and listen to them is to prepare a summary, is to write down a summary that is going to compose, as I say, your examination of both passages, right? You're going to summarize the reading passage and you're going to summarize the listening passage. And as you did in the speaking section, remember, your task is to summarize the material. It's not to offer your opinion, not yet. You're going to have time for that in the next task, in the next essay we're going to discuss. But for now, you simply have to think about this essay as if you were a journalist. And actually, in this part of the exam, I would say that my analogy applies even more. Because remember that journalists normally write down, right? That's their work. They write down essays, they write down articles, etc., etc. And they do so for a simple reason, because that's their job. And that is exactly here your task. You have to write down an essay, summarizing a reading passage and summarizing a lecture, summarizing information from both of the sources, just as a journalist would do. And remember, you don't have to alter the information. You don't have to change it. You don't have to disrupt it, but you have to present it just as you receive it, okay? Just as a journalist would do. The journalist doesn't take the information and alters it. For example, if the journalist got the information from a source, a very valid source, that let's say a person was murdered, he's not going to go to write down a summary and say the person committed suicide. No, right? Because the information as he received it from the source is that the person was murdered, not that he or she committed suicide. So please be very conscious when doing this, because I really want you to be loyal to the information as you receive it, okay? You have to receive the information and you have to display it just as you receive it. It's very important, it's crucially important, okay? Well, let's continue. So how much time do you have for writing this essay after you read and listen to these passages? You have 20 minutes, okay? 20 minutes to write on this essay. And I guess you are asking this to yourself, is there a minimum quantity of words my essay needs to have? And the response is yes. There is a minimum quantity of words you have to match if you want to get a good qualification, okay? So ETS for this particular essay is requesting out of you to write down at least 150 words. I repeat, you have to write down an essay that is at least 150 words. Of course, you can write down more, and as more you write, the better. Nonetheless, the minimum quantity of words is 150. So if you want to get a decent qualification, a decent score in the writing section, it is a crucial and essential necessity to write down at least 150 words, okay? That's very important. We're going to get into how to write down more words, etc. But until that point, just wanted to clarify that. Well, let me show you this on the simulator. As I always say, using this tool is very important, sorry, because it allows us to get a pretty clear picture of what you have to do, okay? So let me show you how this is going to look like on the day of the exam. And once you understand how it's going to look like, it's not going to be difficult to practice. Let me get into this thing here. All right, in this case, integrated essay, answer and answer question. Let's go. Well, so when you come to the writing section, first thing, as I always tell you, set of instructions, right? It's basically telling you the same. I'm explaining right now that you have to write down an essay after you read and listen to two different passages, and that your only aim and objective is to summarize both of them in such essay, okay? And as I tell you here, they are, well, very, very much strict when requiring out of you to write down at least 150 words. And, well, they tell you, right? It's fine if you write down an essay of 225 words. But by the way, this is not a limitation, okay? This is just a manner they use for you to tell you, or for you to know, excuse me, how many words would it be appropriate for you to write, okay? So many people are concerned and say, well, the minimum is 150, but what if they don't like this quantity? And what they're trying to tell me is that I need to write down 400 words. No, they're telling you that they want to receive at least 150, and that they will be happy, that is to say, very happy, if you write down 225. Now, this doesn't mean that if you want to write more and you are able to do so, you cannot do it. You can actually do it. For example, when I took my TOEFL exam last year, what I did was to write down for this essay, I think 300 words, right? And of course, that helped me to receive the qualification I got. So certainly, if you are aiming for excellence or perfection, you certainly want to have as many words as you can. But if you're just aiming to get a general score, that is okay. It's a very, well, as I say, decent score that fulfills your necessity. We'll go for 150 and something between 225, okay? As I say, 20 minutes for writing the essay. This is basically a set of instructions, not very important. Now let's get into the question itself. Now, as I told you, first thing you receive from ETS, a reading passage, okay? Notice that this reading passage is, as I say, longer when compared to other passages we've had in the past. And that's the reason why they give you 3 minutes for reading this passage, right? Remember that in the past, we had 4 or 5 seconds for reading passages. Now we have 3 minutes, okay? So of course, it's considerable, all right? Now, as I always tell you, when you are presented with this passage, there's going to be a chronometer, okay? At some point on your screen. Notice that in this case, it's on my right corner. It could also appear on the left corner, or maybe here in this upper part. The position could vary. Now, the idea is that there's always going to be a chronometer, and that chronometer is going to be going backwards, okay? 3 minutes, 2 minutes and 59, 2 minutes and 58, 2 minutes and 57, and so on, until you reach 0, okay? So as I say, you have those 3 minutes for reading this passage, and it's very important for you to know that if you, dear students, read this passage before the 3 minutes are over, you have a chance to press this button here next. As you can see, it's a button that says next. That is also going to be appearing on your screen the day of the exam. And you can press this button that says next in order for you to move on to the next part of the task, okay? It's not necessary for you to be there the entire time, okay? Not necessary. Now, what my recommendation is for you to do in this part of the exam is, if you finalize reading before the 3 minutes are over, don't press this button, okay? It's not a very good idea. I would say it's not the best technique you could apply. What you can do instead, dear students, is, hey, you take this, right? And if you notice that you read this passage before your 3 minutes are over, instead of pressing this button next and skipping this part and going to the listening part, stay here for a while and use the rest of your 3 minutes for preparing your summary. Remember that what you have to do in your essay at the end is to summarize this. So if you have remaining time, you have extra time, why not to use it for doing that purpose? So take your notes. As you know, you have the opportunity to have paper, right, and pencils during the entire exam. So take it. Start thinking about your summary writing. Okay, I'm gonna summarize it this way, so that when you come to the actual essay, you know what to do. You're not gonna be thinking that, okay, so what do I do now? And you're gonna, of course, waste your precious time in thinking when you could be immediately writing, right? So please notice that it's very important, very, very important to do so. Okay. So, well, let's go. Fantastic. So after 3 minutes are over, the computer is going to take you, dear students, to this other part of the exam automatically. Okay, you don't have to do anything. The computer is going to take you there, very automatic. Trust me there. So what do you do? Okay, here, as you can see, is where you're going to have the opportunity to listen to the lecture that accompanies such reading passage. And please understand something. It's very important for you to know that in this case, dear students, you have to listen to this lecture and the computer is going to reproduce this automatically, okay? On the exam, you don't have the chance to do what I'm doing right now. Notice that I can reproduce and pause it if I want. But on the exam, you cannot do this. As I explained to you in the fourth task of the speaking section, you cannot, for example, skip or, I don't know, to go back during the lectures display. You cannot do it. You can simply listen to this once. You don't have a chance to listen to this twice. But when you listen to this lecture once, that's all you get. The rest is, well, the essay. But you don't have a chance to listen to this twice. So as you listen, please, of tremendous importance, to take your notes, okay, of this listening passage, and of course, to apprehend and write down every single detail you manage to get, and well, certainly the main ideas of the listening part, okay? So as I always tell you, use your skills, your abilities, write down your notes as efficient as you can. And well, that is going to be a huge relief later on in the exam when you have to summarize things, okay? Very good. So this is it. So when you finalize, okay, dear students, when you finalize listening to this lecture, the computer is going to automatically take you to the next part, which is, well, the menu where you actually write down the essay. Here's where you write it down, okay? So notice this. Let me explain this menu because it's very important, I think. You really have to know this. So look at my screen, okay? So maybe this is surprising for most of you. You remember the reading passage you had to read in 3 minutes, right? Look at it. It's one more time available to you. It's the same reading passage you read that you have 3 minutes for reading at the beginning of this task. And it's once again here available to you. And this is going to remain, dear students, on your screen during the entire time you have for writing this essay. That is to say, 20 minutes, okay? So please notice that if you, for example, didn't have a chance to understand something very good in the reading passage, the reading passage is once again be available here to you to use it for any purpose you may think of, okay? Now, the thing here is, as I say, the listening part is not available anymore. So please don't make your expectations there. You cannot listen to it twice, but the reading passage is going to be available, okay, during the entire 20 minutes, all right? Well, first thing, what about this box that you can see here? As you can see, this is the reply box where you are able to type down your text. And here is, of course, where you write down your essay. For example, right, if I say, I don't know, firstly, right, in the reading passage, whatever, right? In the reading passage, we have been presented with, I don't know, Darwin's, I don't know, evolutionary theory, right? Whatever. So notice here's where you can write down your essay, okay? And what you have to know is that apart from having the chance to write down within this reply box, you're also going to have this. Look at this. Below the reply box, you have a word counter, okay? With this word counter, you're able to know how many words you've written until that point. So for example, until this point, how many words, excuse me, did I write? 13. And if I continue, I don't know. Moreover, the professor explained, I don't know, the professor, I don't know, explained that Darwin postulated I don't know, this hypothesis or this theory, let's say, in the, I don't know, 18th century or whatever, 18th century. So notice that as I continue writing down my essay, the word counter augments, okay? So this is how you're gonna check out how many words you wrote. So whenever you know that, okay, hey, I have written 150 words, you know that at that point you can actually stop because that is the minimum requirement you are requested to write down. If you are less than 150 words, continue writing, okay? Because you really need to match that quantity. If you don't write down at least 150 words, trust me, it is not a very good scenario because you cannot actually expect good results. Your scores are not going to be that decent or fulfilling if you write down less than 150 words. So you really want to make sure that you're writing those 150 words. Okay, it's a very important thing. Okay, dear students. So please have that on mind. In this case, I'm writing 26 words. So fantastic. What else? So another thing you have to know is that here on the upper part of the menu, you're going to have different things, different buttons. Okay, they're not here because, as I tell you, this is a simulator. It's not the exact exam or something. But in here, dear students, you're going to have some buttons. Okay, there's going to be a button here that says undo, and that means that, for example, if at some point for I don't know, for the concentration or blunder, you erase everything you've written, you can press that button undo, and well, of course, your text is going to come back. It's the same if you press Ctrl Z, you can actually do it, and well, the last action is going to be undo, right? So well, there you have it. If you commit that mistake or blunder, you can undo it, and it's not going to be a big deal. Don't worry about that, okay? And now, although it may be surprising for most of you, there are going to be two other buttons here on the upper part of the menu, and those buttons are copy and paste, okay? Maybe it seems very counterintuitive to find these buttons here, but well, that's how it works. The buttons, copy and paste, are going to be available here on the upper part of your exam. And maybe you're wondering, okay, so if I have the chance to copy and paste, does that mean that I can do this? Like, for example, I say this, I press Ctrl Z, I come here and I paste. Well, theoretically, you can do it, of course, and practically too, right? Pragmatically speaking, you can do it. You can actually take the entire reading passage if you want, Ctrl C, and of course you can paste it here. It wouldn't be an impossible action. Now, should you do that? Of course not, because first of all, it's going to be evident, right? Evidently, people are going to notice that you're doing that. And of course, you're not going to receive any good qualification for copying and pasting things. Now, maybe you're wondering, so why did they give me the chance to have those buttons then in the first place? Very simple reason, dear students. There is a resource in literary writing and use that is called quoting, right? You know what is quoting, right? Quoting is when you make a reference to what other people said. So for example, if at some point you want to say, as the reading passage suggests, for example, after the reading passage suggests, comma, and you make a quotation symbol that is this one, right? You can, for example, copy a little fraction of the reading passage and insert it here. That is the only legitimate use you can make of the copy and paste buttons, okay? This is the only legitimate use. You cannot use it for other purposes, all right? So notice that you need to know how to quote, of course. There are a lot of rules, grammar rules you have to check out. That is, of course, your own responsibility to know how to write down appropriately your grammar. That is your own responsibility, right, as a student and as an English learner. But if you know how to quote appropriately, you're going to have a chance to do that. And it's a very good resource, trust me, for two different reasons. First of all, it allows you to have more words, obviously, very rapidly. And secondly, remember that one of the criteria they use in order to analyze your writing and to give you a qualification is how many literary resources you use. And there are plenty of literary resources, quoting, semicolon, ironical questions, exclamative sentences, etc., etc. I don't know, for example, analogies, etc., etc. So all of those literary resources, when you apply them legitimately and appropriately, of course, are going to be well regarded, and your score is going to reflect that. Okay. So you want to make sure that your essay contains as many literary resources you can find. All right. And of course, that's your responsibility. That's your move. You have to prepare yourself for that and to learn by yourself what type of rules that exist for using quotation, etc., etc. Okay. Well, and yeah, that's what you have to know about the menu here. And apart from this, as I say, this is where you write on the essay. You have the 20 minutes. Another chronometer is going to appear on one corner of your screen. And as I say, 20 minutes going backwards, 20 minutes, 1959, 1958, 1957, until, well, the last minute, right? And now something that I want to say here, dear students, is maybe you're wondering, notice that in this case, here I have a correction, right? In this case, it's a grammar correction. Of course, well, I didn't write this very consciously, right? So that's the reason why I have this error. But notice that in this case, my computer is telling me, hey, you have a mistake here, okay? And that's because I have Grammarly on my computer, okay? Now, the only reason why I have this message here, that this word, although it's correctly written, is in this case missing this important comma, is because I have Grammarly. But this is not going to happen on the exam, okay, dear students? Sadly, on the exam, nothing is going to tell you when you have incorrectly written a word or when you have, I don't know, committed a grammar mistake. Nothing is going to tell you, okay? Nothing. So you are the only person who must analyze and check out your essay in an orthography basis, in a grammar basis, so that you know your complete essay is correctly written, because it will be useless if you write down an essay of 500 words in this part of the exam and everything is messed up. That is to say, your grammar is terrible, you committed a lot of orthography mistakes, you have a lot of spelling mistakes, etc., etc. So of course it will be useless. The quantity of words is important indeed, but the most important thing here is to write down an orthographical and grammarly correct essay. Okay, I repeat, the most important thing here is to write down an orthographical and grammarly correct essay. So if you write a very good essay with flawless grammar, flawless orthography, you're going to have a very good qualification. Okay, so how do you do that then? If nothing tells you, if you don't have a software that highlights the word that is incorrect or any other grammar mistake, how do you do to correct it or to review it? Well, the old manner, using your own eyes and reading it once and again and once and again. So if, given that that's the case, and then you're going to have to check out your own essay and review it maybe 2 times in order to check out if you made it, if you committed a mistake in your spelling, in your grammar, in your orthography. How do you do so? My recommendation, dear students, for all of you would be, please make sure, okay, and I'm going to emphasize this, make sure to use, for example, this is how I did it. I used 15 of my minutes, okay, I repeat, I used 15 out of the 20 minutes I got for writing my essay. I wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote without thinking about my grammar, without thinking about my orthography. I just wrote for 15 minutes. I wrote. And when I saw that I just had 5 minutes in my chronometer, what did I do? I stopped and I started to review my essay. If it needed to be 2 times, I corrected it 2 times. But I read from the beginning until the end, looking for mistakes, looking for grammar mistakes, orthography mistakes that, of course, are very possible, and more when we are nervous, when we are pressured, when we are using a computer, etc., right? And we are typing. There are going to be a lot of mistakes, several. So what do you do in that case? As I say, reserve for yourself, for example, 5 minutes, in my case, right? But if you, for example, would like to use 10 minutes to review your essay and to use the other 10 minutes for writing it, fantastic. Decide that by yourself. But in my case, I did that distribution. I took that distribution. I used 15 minutes for writing the essay and 5 for reviewing it. And for me, personally, it was fantastic. It worked. I was never pressured, etc. I felt very good. Now, in your case, if you are more scrupulous, okay, and you really need to have certainty that you have written a fantastic and flawless essay, well, take more time. Take 8 minutes, 9 minutes for reviewing it, for checking it out. It's important, okay, dear students? You have to do that. Very, very important. Well, and yeah, that's something that I wanted to say. And the last thing, something that I've noticed that many people do is, for example, let's say you're writing. I'm gonna write whatever here. I don't know. Let's say on the other hand, right? Hand. Notice this. The listening audio proposed a different view on this subject. Notice how many errors I committed. Several, right? Here, here, and here. And of course, they are noticeable to me because I have grammar. But the thing is, when you write down your essay on the exam, maybe you're going to be tempted to, okay, hey, I committed a mistake. For example, when I was in this part, if you noticed, what I did was to correct it, right? I wrote this and I wanted to erase, and I didn't want to continue until I corrected it. That is not a very healthy practice, okay, dear students. It's not a very sound practice. Why? Because if you always write a stop, write a stop, because you're correcting your mistakes, you're going to completely lose your reasoning train. You're going to lose your ideas, you're going to lose your grammar fluency, and you don't want to do that. So as I say, when you are writing, just write. Don't think about the orthography, don't think about the grammar, don't think about your typing mistakes. No, just continue writing as if everything were fantastic. And when you reach that time that you have set up for yourself, as I say, in my case, it was 15 minutes, stop writing and then correct. Because if you, for example, as I say, commit a mistake, for example, instead of writing orders, you write offer, for example, and you stop to correct it, and then you continue, and you do that several times and several times, you're just going to get confused. And as I say, you're going to lose your ideas, and you don't want that. Okay? So please follow my recommendation. Don't stop while writing. Write as if there wouldn't be a problem there. And when your settled time for reviewing and correcting the essay has come, stop and then correct your mistakes. Okay? Take your time to correct it, but just for doing so. Because if you go about writing and correcting at the same time, you're just going to get confused. Okay? Trust me. I committed that mistake very, very much normally in the past. But now when I am performing on an exam, or as I say, very recently I took the the Duolingo exam, and I never stopped. When I wrote my essay for the Duolingo exam, I never stopped. As I did for the TOEFL exam. When I was in my TOEFL exam, I never stopped writing. Of course, maybe my daily basis, when I'm writing for my university or something, or for my job, I of course stop because I want to have a perfect writing. But on the exam, it's not a good idea. Just write everything. And when you have, for example, reached the minute 15, stop and correct. Or your 10 minutes, for example, right? Maybe you're saying, okay, I'm going to use 10 minutes to write down my essay and 10 minutes for correcting. Okay, in minute 10, stop and then correct. Okay, but do not do this. Do not do both things at the same time. It's simply inefficient. Okay. Well, that's what I wanted to tell you about this. Is there any question now, dear students, with regard to this menu or with regard to how this works? Please, I listen to your concerns and doubts. Questions, guys, about this?
Teacher, for this part, do we have a special template?
Yeah, of course we have. We have one.
Okay.
My pleasure. We have one. Don't worry, I'm gonna show it to you. But yeah, until this point, like with regard to the menu or with regard to the buttons here or the organization, is there something you like to ask? No? Okay, very good. So let's get into the template, okay? Well, coming back here then, I'm gonna send to the I'm gonna send your students to the WhatsApp groups a very important document, okay, that I want you to have. Where I have it. Well, so I'm sending the template, okay, for the first task of the writing section. I want you to have it. Download it, okay? You have it, and here you have it too. So get this, please. Fantastic. So please, if you open that document, follow me, okay? open it in your computer, you're going to be able to see this. Fantastic. Well, here we have the template that you're going to use for writing your essay. Of course, we have a template, and in this case, it only consists of two different parts, an introduction and body. We don't have conclusions here. I'm going to explain why, but we merely have an introduction and body, okay? And you actually have here the sentences, the introductory sentences, the transition sentences, the connectors you have to use for the essay. Basically, you have all the structure. The only thing that is going to vary here is the information you summarize, of course, but the same sentences and phrases are going to be repeated, okay? So in order for you to understand this very clearly, I took the initiative to write down an essay using this template. So if you scroll down a little bit, you're going to find out that I wrote here an essay. Look at it, dear students. I wrote an essay using the template that we have here so that you know how to use it and apply it to your own essays, okay? So what I want us to do right now before we explain this is that we're going to read together the passage and we're going to listen to the lecture that corresponds to the essay that I wrote here. Why? Because tomorrow, when we start to practice this and I explain you how to use this template, I want you to please have the idea already inserted on your mind, okay? So please, as I said, in order to understand this essay that I wrote using my template, you need to know, of course, the topic that I wrote this essay about. So let us go to the simulator and let us read together and listen to the passage, okay? That we are going to use for exemplifying that. Let me get into it very quickly. Just give me a sec. All right. Wait a second. Okay. This is another one. And this is going to be like a little homework, okay? But it's not a homework as such, but it's simply reading the essay that I just sent you, so you can understand my explanation very thoroughly tomorrow. Okay, so this is the reading passage. I'm going to paste it in both WhatsApp groups, okay, dear students? Here you have it. And you're going to read this at home, all right? I'm going to read this at home. There you have it. Now, what I want you to know right now is that this passage is about one Roman emperor that was named Claudius. Maybe you know about him if you like history. Claudius, okay? So this essay, as I say, or this reading passage is your homework. You have to read it, okay? Tomorrow, or until tomorrow. And what I want you to know right now is that this passage, dear students, okay, is talking about Claudius in a positive manner. Basically, this reading passage that I have pasted to your WhatsApp groups is talking wonders, beauties about Claudius. They are proclaiming him. They are admiring him. It's a passage in favor of Claudius. Why do I tell you this detail? Because you're going to notice that this lecture we're going to listen right now is going to be talking about Claudius, yes, but there is a particular characteristic. Instead of talking a positive view on this Roman emperor Claudius, the lecture is going to talk in a negative manner. It's going to be against Claudius, okay? You're going to notice by yourself. And this is a very important detail for you to notice, because tomorrow, when I explain you how to use the template, it's going to be of crucial importance for you to understand, okay? So please listen to this lecture. Take your notes, please. It's very important. Take your notes of this lecture and notice by yourself how this lecture is going to talk against Claudius. It's going to say that Claudius was a terrible emperor, very unwise, etc., etc. And when you read this passage that I sent to your WhatsApp groups, you're going to notice how this reading passage is completely in favor of Claudius. It's as if they were opposing each other, okay? So listen to this lecture.
Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic you just read about.
The Emperor Claudius is a fascinating figure. He was traditionally portrayed as a vicious fool in ancient history books. But some sources, like the novel I, Claudius, which is a great book by the way, some sources portray him as one of the strongest Roman emperors. I want to interrogate that idea today. He certainly did a lot of good for the empire, but perhaps the traditional account of Claudius's reign emphasizing the weakness of the emperor as a leader, is closer to the historical truth than the popular new revisionist account. Was he really as innovative, fair, and wise as the textbook suggests? Claudius definitely did some good things in his reign, like build new aqueducts and a port for Rome. But the biggest innovation of his reign, his coming to power by paying off the army after the assassination of the previous emperor, well, that would prove to be a dangerous precedent for the Roman Empire. It was a terrible precedent, in fact, and later, people doing the same things as Claudius would plunge Rome into civil war. As for Claudius's fairness, he might have created laws supporting the rights of slaves and expanding Roman citizenship. But, he was a notoriously bad judge, who was accused of making legal decisions without even listening to both sides of the case. He loved violent gladiatorial games, and had thousands of men executed simply for the amusement of the Roman people. He even conquered Britain to win prestige, destroying its indigenous peoples. So I wouldn't exactly call this very fair behavior. The text also mentions his wisdom, but, well, it's true that Claudius favored people like slaves and former slaves, but they were notorious for being corrupt. Many of them amassed giant personal fortunes at the expense of the Roman people and were subject to bribery. His wives were also famous for being murderous and disloyal. In fact, his last wife poisoned him with a mushroom, and her son would go on to become the Emperor Nero, who was one of the worst rulers of world history. Claudius deserves at least some blame for the disasters of his reign, since someone as irresponsible as Nero should have never been made his heir. I mean, it wasn't very wise to choose him for a successor, was it?
Very good. So that's the lecture. And as I told you, the lecture is completely against Claudius, right? It's displaying a very negative perspective on this emperor. And when you read this as your homework, okay, you're going to notice how this reading passage talks about Claudius in a very positive and optimistic manner, okay? So please read this passage and read please as well the essay that I wrote here using this template and summarizing both materials. Because remember, this summary, essay at the end is a summary of the reading passage I'm giving you as a homework and the lecture you have just listened to, okay? So please, your homework is to read the passage about Nero and then to read this essay that I wrote, following the template so that you know more or less how to use it. Tomorrow I'm going to explain this, of course, in depth, but I want you to have the notion on your mind, okay? So please, that's a little homework for tomorrow's class. And yeah, fantastic. We're going to finalize here, okay? Great. So let me please stop sharing my screen. And please, before you go, help me with your kind responses to our traditional poll. And please listen to your names, okay? As I take your assistance. All right, fantastic. Let's get into it. And if you have any question or commentary, please feel free to express it. Well, so we have here Karen Silvana.
Here, teacher. What?
No, this, yeah.
Yeah. Only the list. Okay.
Yeah.
Present.
Okay, thank you very much. What about Daniela Crespo?
Present, teacher.
Thank you very much, Daniela. What about Diane Romina? Okay, what about Jasmine Camila?
Present, teacher.
Thank you very much, Jasmine. What about Lenny Jimenez?
Present, teacher.
Thank you very much, Lenny. What about Yvonne Cana? What about Maya Mariel?
Present, teacher.
Thank you very much, Maya. What about Flavia Montani?
Present, teacher.
Thanks, Flavia. What about Karen Ginelli?
Present, teacher.
Thank you very much, Karen. And finally, we have Lucia Suleiman.
Present, teacher.
Thank you very much. Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Thank you guys for your kind responses. See you tomorrow then in order to practice this together and to explain the template. And please don't forget to read the passage I sent to the WhatsApp group and also to read the essay that I wrote, summarizing both the reading passage and the lecture about Nero and, Claudius. Okay? See you tomorrow. Have a fantastic night.
See you tomorrow. Bye, teacher.
Teacher.
Bye, teacher. Thank you very much.
Bye.